Thy will be done, teaching the Talmidi Israelite faith through the words of the Our Father, by Shmuel ben Naftali. Please visit our website at www.talmidi.co.il. Continuing Chapter 2, the Ancient Community of the Way and the Talmidi Israelite View of the Second Temple Period. Section 6. The Trembling of Heaven and Earth. In the last section, I looked at the effect of the glory of God and the fire of Yahweh. Let's now look at how the justice-dealing glory of God will feel to us living on earth. As I've previously mentioned, the root of our understanding of the way that God works is contained in the story of the Exodus and of the wandering of the Israelites in the Sinai desert. For example, when God's presence came to rest on Mount Horeb, it says that the whole mountain trembled violently. What this is meant to suggest to us is that when God's presence moves amongst humanity, the earth and the sky shake, quake and tremble. That is, the fabric of the universe is shaken. The prophet Isaiah describes God's movement to judge wrongdoers as rising to shake the earth. When God judges humanity, even in this life, the prophet Haggai says that God will once more shake the heavens and the earth, the sea and the dry land. The book of Samuel says, "The earth trembled and quaked, the foundations of the heavens shook, they trembled because God was angry." These biblical verses are not merely poetic license. There was a belief in the ancient Israelite way of thinking that when God's righteous anger was aroused to punish injustice and wrongdoing, the very fabric of the universe shook. Through the prophet Isaiah, Yahweh says, "Therefore I will make the heavens tremble, and the earth will shake from its place at the righteous anger of Yahweh of the heavenly battalions, in the day of God's burning anger." This movement of God had ramifications for ordinary people too, both good and bad. The prophet Nahum says, "The earth trembles at God's presence, the world and all who live in it." In other words, all people, both good and bad, would be affected by God's movement to right wrongs in the world. So whenever it says that when God moves to judge, how the earth, the sky, and the sea shake, tremble, or quake, most of the time it's not talking about geological earthquakes and tsunamis. Instead, this is the ancient Israelite way of saying that God's movement shakes the very fabric of the universe. The result of this shaking, this Ra'ash Hashamayim in Hebrew, is that the misfortune and trials of life increase. Both good and bad people appear to suffer for no reason. Also, in Israelite thought, the glory and presence of Yahweh is considered so powerful that it is thought of as having a purifying effect on anything and anyone it touches. Evil and sin cannot stand or endure against God's glory. Through the power of God's presence and glory alone, God would punish the guilty, but purify the righteous, even in this life. As God starts to act, the very fabric of the universe shakes and trembles. This trembling is experienced by everyone as misfortune and upheaval. Good people would also experience this movement of God's presence. They would begin experiencing misfortune, an unintended consequence of God's movement to act against injustice. In Ezekiel 38:20, it says, "The fish of the sea, the birds of the air, the beasts of the field, every creature that moves along the ground, and all the people on the face of the earth will tremble at my presence." But if good people endured, they would be purified by everything that happened to them, because to the ancient Hebrew mind, both blessing and misfortune were from Yahweh. The oldest portions of the book of Job were written in the period of the patriarchs. Hebrew culture had not yet experienced the shaking, the spiritual earthquake caused by God's presence at Horeb. Hebrew culture used to think that the trembling of heaven and earth, that which led to the misfortune of the righteous, was caused by the unpredictable movement of wild mythological beasts such as the behemoth, the leviathan, and the ziz, collectively called Iyim in Hebrew. They were supposedly all creations of God, and human beings could not defeat these supernatural creatures, only God, who alone created them. Another incarnation of the Leviathan was Rahav, or Rahab in English. It was specifically the sea demon, a giant fish which caused tumult and chaos, noise and disturbance. Again, it was a mythological creature invented to explain what later became known in Yahweh's thought as the trembling of heaven and earth. Remember, the Hebrew Bible contains a record of Hebrew theology at all stages of its evolution, including things we now know which are not true. We, of course, know now that there are no such things as behemoths and leviathans. They were mythological inventions designed to help the ancient Hebrews understand this Ra'ash Hashamayim, this trembling of the fabric of the universe when God acts to punish wrongdoing. The Ebionite portions of the Book of Revelation use these mythological devices to explain the suffering of the righteous, and they are an obvious poetic nod to the Book of Job. In short, wrongdoers are punished by God's actions, but good people are purified by God's judgment. Misfortune and the trials of life are for different reasons, according to whether one has done good or bad things. If one has done good things, then you should not see the trials of life as any kind of punishment. You are blameless and can hold your head high, knowing that God is moving to right wrongs. Please see the links to the next video and the previous video in the description below. If you have a genuine interest in Talmidaism, you can join our discussion group by sending a blank email with subscribe in the title to talmidi-subscribe@yahoogroups.com. If you have a genuine inquiry and want to know more about Talmidaism, please email thywillbedone.talmidi@gmail.com.